Hey, everybody, welcome to Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave. I'm joined with my co host, Greg. And today I started the intro without using the word the before our title. And now I feel weird. Should I do it over?
Don't feel weird, Dave. The thing is, this is Halloween time. So we kind of take a little bit during Halloween and Christmas, we kind of do like the more relaxed fit, even though they might be a little more intense and scary, less research heavy, more kind of relaxed, more fun, I think. So even we're so relaxed that we're like late with the episode drop, which is my fault. I apologize. Been my fault quite a bit, but we will work on that. And we're here. We're making it in the week,
Yep.
so
Yep.
that's all good stuff. Dave, I wanted to talk to you about something because I've been watching a lot of like haunted stuff lately, and there's Netflix has that new show, which is okay. But like I think one of the more terrifying aspects that's like shared across almost all paranormal slash horror is this sense of losing yourself or being overcome by emotion. People literally saying like it's a common to say like what possessed me to do that. So there is this thing in society or in human nature that like being overcome with emotion or anger or whatever. Anger is an emotion, I get that. But like the sense that you could lose yourself. And isn't that what like or certainty or sanity. That's like kind of what like a haunting is. Am I losing my mind? Is everything I thought that was real not real?
Yep.
And in today's case, we're going to talk a little bit something maybe a little bit different. Like the fear of losing control, I think is at the base of this. Like almost a metaphor for letting your base desires take the wheel and unleashing the monster that is inside of all
I
us
think
all.
one of the other things that we're going to discover in this is the power how powerful our minds can truly be when we don't understand something and how we try to make sense of it.
Hmm.
And I think that that's something that comes up quite a bit for a number of things that we've discussed. Like when our brain doesn't understand something, it tries to come up with an answer. It's even like what we were talking about, was it the shame episode? If we
Yeah.
don't understand why something exists, like we blame ourselves, right? If we don't understand the causation of something, we blame ourselves. Well, this is like a very different version of that, but it is still similar in the way that our mind will try to come up with answers. And sometimes those answers are extremely off base, but we don't know that because it's our mind that's coming up with the answer, right?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that because I've noticed a few times now, people end up in a psych area when they have a very medical condition. I see it a lot with like macular degeneration and like eye stuff,
Mhm.
where someone will come in completely normal and calm and be like, "I'm seeing ants crawl over my arms," or "I'm seeing tigers in the room," and it's just because like like your eyes are damaged, so the lack of visual input, your brain
Yeah.
sort of kind of reconstructs this idea and sends you messages that are like, "Oh, well, it must be this." It tries to fill the gaps, it tries to make sense of it, and sometimes it gets it wrong, and that's just human nature. It's crazy that you're right. Like it is always us seeking certainty.
Right.
Like,
It's like that thing where if you're someone who like maybe has in the corner of your eye you see shadows,
hmm.
like passing shadows, it might seem like. And I feel like that's probably more of an eye issue
Yeah,
than it is anything else.
yeah,
But then your brain tells you it's a ghost, right?
it's a ghost, baby.
It's a
Yeah.
ghost. And another topic that's going to be presented in this episode is that idea of truth, which you and I have both talked about in the past. Truth is our perspective. There's no,
Mhm.
like, my truth is what I believe, right? And your truth is what you believe. And those
And
truths
not
can be
only what you
different.
believe, it's like what you believe and what is sort of confirmed to you over and over in a sense.
Right.
And things like we're going to be talking about today, historically, like werewolves. These things were quote unquote proven to be true on multiple occasions because, you know, they couldn't be unproven and they explained a lot, right?
Right. Right.
So like so the reason why we're late is because we were going to do, I can blame my dad. We were going to do
With
an
my
episode
dad.
well on exorcisms and stuff like that, and like maybe like the religious stuff my dad gets a little uncomfortable. Hyper religious. Not in a
I
bad
need
way.
Greg, I need to just reassure him
Yeah.
the way that it would be presented. I actually the reason why I mean I was a little bummed. I'm not upset, but I was a little bummed because there is something about exorcisms I did want to touch on, and like not touch on, like I did want to like discuss in our episode of exorcisms. And I don't think it would be upsetting. But it's the
Okay.
idea of like doing unsanctioned exorcisms and the dangers around that. I do think it's something that needs to be discussed so that people understand that like there's more to these, like we hear these cases but we don't a lot of times hear these cases of the unsanctioned and the very dangerous and
They are
like
very
the
dangerous.
power of the mind when you don't want to give up that, we've talked about that before, like when someone has beliefs, we talked about with cults, and they just can't give it up because then they're kind of like admitting
Yeah. Oh,
that
absolutely.
everything they've been
So
driven by is
it
wrong.
becomes like a fixed delusion. And then there's
Yes.
also this very interesting thing that comes up a lot in psych. And it's like this, you know, being super religious at times allows for someone to be, this has happened recently with a patient of mine, allows for someone to be, um, delusional in a sense, but explain it away with, religion, like with
Yeah,
religion, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
then it's like it gets to a point where it's like, all right, well, you're making these decisions that you're losing your job, your family's in danger, all these things based on this accepted belief, very accepted belief, yet your perception of it is a delusion and it's over the top. And it's like, how do you walk that line of what's an appropriate
Hmm.
sort of belief
Right.
versus like what's a clear delusion? Like
Yeah.
so, say if someone's seeing, it's almost like the Joan of Arc thing, right? She's
100%. Yep.
seeing things accepted throughout history as potential possibility, even heroic, but like your life's crumbling down all around you. How do you tell someone that maybe this is not divine intervention without sounding like maybe like
A
something
disbeliever.
nefarious? You know what I
Right,
mean?
right,
Like,
yeah.
you know, so
So that was kind of some of the topic that was presented. So I don't know if that would change things because I do think that there's a lot of
I'll talk to
psychology around that.
Paulie. I'll talk to
Yeah.
Paulie boy.
But so we decided to navigate in a different direction, and we came up with the topic. And this is actually something I had wanted to do for a while, lycanthropy or
Mhm.
lycomania, I guess
Yeah,
you as another term for it. But I had wanted to do this for a while, and I had thought of the idea of like doing a whole spooky diagnosis episode. But then I was like, well, I actually don't know anymore besides this one, so let's just do this one, I guess, for now until I can think of more. Um, and then it like dawned on me as I was doing this is, this is actually something that I think is kind of along the lines of what you just talked about. There's like, as a kid, I remember pretending I was a dog and with my own dog, like being a dog with my dog.
yeah, I think that's okay.
But at some point, that might not be okay.
Right, right, right.
Right. And this is what this is.
Yeah, yeah. Like drinking out of his water and stuff. Dave, you're gonna get sick.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You know. So Dave, let's first talk about like the classic werewolf lore, and I've been reading this book Mythos, this ancient Greek myths. It's actually
Mhm.
really good. But
I've heard of this book. A few people have
oh,
mentioned it.
it's so cool. Like it really is. It's kind of opened a lot of I didn't know it was so closely related to other religions, the Greek mythology.
Hmm.
It's really close. Anyways, Greek and Roman myths of gods punishing humans by transforming them into wolves. I mean, a tale as old as time. It's like they couple it with this association of uncontrolled rage and chaos, and then later on down the line, the Europeans take over and make it kind of what it is now, like associated with witchcraft and like pacts with devil and triggered by the full moon. I mean, we all know that the moon's connection to insanity, right? Lunacy. There's this themes of blurring lines between man and beast and this like warring transgression inside all of us. And I think that's like how when you were talking earlier about finding a way to explain something very obvious that happens within all of us, it's like, how do you explain that impulse? How do you explain that rage that takes over when something happens to you? Like, is there a monster inside of me? Like, this must be something that they were kind of grappling with.
Yeah. Yep.
So, all right, ancient classic lore. King Lyason. So, in Greek mythology, he was transformed into a wolf by Zeus for serving human flesh. He like served him his own son for dinner, which Zeus was not a huge fan of, and understandably. So this was one of the earliest and most famous origin stories, and this began like this male werewolf myth. And the Epic of Gilgamesh, which may have actually been, it's right around the same time, this Mesopotamian epic. It's one of the oldest werewolf stories where the goddess Ishtar turns a scorned shepherd into a wolf. And Gilgamesh is interesting because it's like when you talk about the similarities between, it's a flood story. It's essentially like the Noah story, like
Okay.
tied up in that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Can we go back to Zeus for a second?
Yeah, let's go to Zeus.
So Lycon serves Zeus human flesh.
Hmm.
What was Lycon? What was he, like a servant or
He
some
was a
of some
king.
sort? He was a king. Why is he serving Zeus?
It's complicated. So like
It's complicated. All right, good answer.
to sort of like impress Zeus. It's very, you want to know what it's like. It's, you can kind of relate it almost like an Abrahamic story. Whereas like he's almost like sacrificing his favorite child. He was like, it's not like he
So
hated this kid.
Zeus is a god, Lycon with a king. So he was like kind of giving this as like a an offering to the
Yeah,
king.
and the
I mean to
gods
the
would
god.
come, like in Greek mythology, the gods would come down to like hang out with kings and like,
Yeah.
mate, like have sex with them and stuff like that.
Why do you think he transformed him into a wolf?
It was a punishment. Like you're a
Is
monster.
it though?
Like this is what you really are. I know, I know. So there's that side of it too, where you're like, I mean,
There's worse.
yeah. Well, in that story though, he can't like turn back and forth.
He's just strictly a
He's
wolf.
just a wolf now. Yeah.
He just runs off.
He's just a wolf. It's no good. So, I mean, but here you're talking about like that's almost like a cautionary tale about, humans when
Cannibalism.
they abandon like very basic,
Yeah.
order, right? You don't eat your kids. That's their lesson learned. But at some point, that had to be a lesson, right?
There's a reason.
Yeah,
Somebody
right.
was doing it.
And also like this idea of the loss of humanity in people. Just recently I read this thing Aristotle talks about, um, you know, men especially in that rage, and it's like it's like you have a chariot and there's two horses tied to the chariot, and it's like rage and like aggression and it's all this stuff, courage maybe.
Hmm.
But he says that like, if you're not the guy in the chariot in control of these things, then your life's going to be chaos. But without these things, you're not going anywhere, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like you have to have these like like these strong emotions and these it's impulses. It's just about learning how to control them, and I think that's kind of where this folklore all comes from.
I'm
I,
still trying to like get over the idea of like Lycon going up to Zeus and being like, "Can I
you're gonna
interest
love
you in a
this.
taste of my son Chad?"
Yeah. You know what's messed up about that story is he didn't know. He just ate it. That comes up in Greek mythology a lot. Like people, to get someone back, they like serve them their like favorite child. It's like, oh, and they love it. They're like soaking it up with bread.
Mm.
And then
This is really gamey, actually.
yeah, then it's a huge problem. So, all right, I like to think now this is more where we come into like maybe what most people know as terms of like werewolves and like the medieval and modern stuff. So, curses and witchcraft in medieval and modern Europe, werewolves were often depicted as individuals cursed by witches or the devil. Transformations could be triggered by curses, pacts, or magical ointments. Um,
Or lotions.
there was really, yeah, or lotions. Or there was trials for this stuff in the Middle Ages, as we know. Like there's tons of witch trials, but there's also wolf werewolf
Trials.
trials, right?
I like wolf trials.
It's wolf trials. So this legend becomes entwined with the real world accusations of the witchcraft stuff.
Yeah.
And think about maybe a medieval serial killer. They would describe them as werewolves, and they would use the same torture that they would use on witches to get,
Hmm.
I don't know, confessions so that they had an explanation and they can all go to bed at night. Oh, he was a werewolf. And then at some point
Oh,
the
that's good to know.
yeah, yeah. And then at some point the moon gets tied up in all this stuff.
Right.
With like when it's funny how these things build on themselves. Like vampires are the same way. The lore kind of builds and gets, moves with society and cultural norms as time goes on, and the moon becomes sort of part of this because we start to think of the moon in association with insanity. I don't know why that is, but we do.
It has, I mean, it's, do you believe in it?
I think it's not that I believe in it, it's just that there is something to it, I
There's,
think.
full moon nights, there's no doubt that if you work in like human services,
Yep, healthcare,
you see something.
the emergency
You
room's wild.
yeah, group homes, working with individuals with behavioral challenges, I would always see stuff on it, like those nights would always be rocking and rolling. It's just there's definitely an energy about full moons.
Do you think it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy though, where it's like, oh, it's gonna be a full moon tomorrow, everyone's gonna be crazy, and then you're
I
just
don't know. I
crazy?
don't know because I'm sure if we talk to people who believed in or had knowledge of that kind of stuff,
Hmm.
like energy and
Yeah.
astrology and things like that, they probably would tell us there is something to
First, they'd probably put a bunch of crystals on the table on top of some velvet.
it. they
And
flip it.
I don't
They'd
want to say too
flip a
much
few.
because I think that's a lot of our fans, and I'm all for it.
They'd
Like
flip a few cards, and we'd be
the
like, "Hey,
Leon's
I know all
down.
about that now because we did a tarot episode. Did
We
you listen
love
to it?"
yeah, listen to the tarot episode because it's awesome. So there's
We
another thing
try
that
educating them.
I
Hey, I don't know
find
if you,
sort of,
I
you know
don't
what
know
I
if you
find
know
interesting about
this.
this?
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. This like hereditary versus acquired. And I think that's really they're describing mental health here, right? Because there's certain conditions that are more hereditary, like schizophrenia, bipolar, and then there's other ones that are can have similar effects that are acquired through, trauma or whatever. So the ability to transform is often transmitted through a bite or a scratch, which kind of to me represents like a trauma. So now this thing happened to you and now you're different. You carry this with you forever.
Right.
I don't know, that's kind of deep, right?
Hmm.
And then there's also Dave. I don't know. You've of course heard that silver is a weakness of
Yes.
silver bullets. Bop, bop, bop. That's like the mainly. I think that shows up mostly in the Wolfman in 1941. That we talked about that movie when you made me watch four of the most boring movies on earth, and then which was great, Um, but like the moon is connected to alchemy, and the silver has to do with that somehow. And there's also this thing that I found that's really interesting that it just kind of saw it as like the bottom of some paragraph, and it was that Judas paid 30 pieces of silver to, he got paid that to betray Jesus,
Mm.
and maybe the silver represents like the guilt and it hurts them as like a reminder of some damnation, as if Judas is like the embodiment of all evil at this point, or at
Right.
least connected to it. And if you read Dante, Judas is down in the lowest part of hell with the devil and Brutus, Judas Brutus, down there. You know what I mean? So
So, so kind of along the lines of Lycaon and
yeah,
Zeus. This
ooh,
there's like a contrast here with these two ideas, right? Judas and Jesus, Lycaon and Zeus. It's betrayal
betrayal and punishment,
and punishment.
and then and then it morphs into internal struggle,
Right.
right? Like struggling with your humanity and your control of your violent urges or your the things that it's almost like to me living in accordance with your values versus living based on your impulses and your desires and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And we also talked about in the past how um I don't know, Dave, to us it seems a little representative of or maybe a historical explanation of like bipolar, where like when maybe if we talked about exorcism we might talk about like dissociative identity disorder, we might talk about schizophrenia, we might talk about bipolar, but we would also probably like because the werewolf now in a modern context is like someone who you know is baseline at times, maybe a little
Yeah.
down sometimes, but has these moments where they just kind of
Rage, anger.
rage
Yeah. I
maniac.
mean, anger, it's representative of anger in many
Sure.
ways. Like just like that inability to manage or self-regulate your emotions.
Mhm.
Um, And yeah, definitely, there that's kind of how we see it now. It's also about identity. And that's something I never had really thought of until I started to look more into this. So there is a clinical lycanthropy or
Mm.
lycomania, which is a psychiatric syndrome where the patient believes they have delusional um, belief of turning into a wolf, right? So this is a super rare thing. Like, how many cases do you think? Rare.
Not many.
Not many, not many at all. But here's another thing. There's also this idea that so it's a specific kind of animal, right? We're talking about turning into a wolf specifically. Now,
Right.
if you looked at like turning into any kind of animal, there's zooanthropy, I think, or zoanthropy. Which is the condition where you have the belief you're turning into an animal, such as like a lion, a tiger, hyena, shark, crocodile. So lycanthropy is specifically for turning into a wolf. Isn't that kind of interesting though?
That is interesting.
There's like a broad umbrella one, but then there's like and then caninethropy, I think is turning into a dog.
You had that.
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting why wolves. And I think you kind of just covered a ton of why wolves, why it would exist that a werewolf or turning into a wolf would be a specific one of them because they're so
Well,
heavily embedded in our history or in
yeah,
culture.
especially like they were always a threat. They were always the thing that were going to take out like your people, right? And they would do it, and it must have seemed so angry, right? And like they're
Right.
your sheep and all these things. Like you're always they could really affect your livelihood. It is a part of our history
It
as human beings.
is. For some cultures, it's probably got a heavier influence than others, I would assume. It's like anything, like certain cultures, like ghosts are very like heavily prominent, right? In
I'm
certain
glad you're saying
religions.
that. That's going to come up
Yeah.
in this.
So I mean, for certain cultures, wolves play a prominent role, and that would make sense why someone might. But like I was reading, and actually I'll cover that later, like the a little bit of the numbers. I don't have a specific number. So some people think that this could be caused by delusional misidentification. Sorry, let me start over.
Yeah.
Delusional misidentification syndrome, which is like a group of disorders where people don't recognize familiar objects or they believe objects have transformed. So it's like looking at yourself and seeing something that you don't necessarily understand or
Which is,
identify.
Dave, we talked about this with Capgras syndrome, which was one of these, delusional misidentification syndromes. And we talked about how if anybody stared in the mirror long enough, they would have hallucinations.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, right? You would start to see like your subconscious would start to put in like parts of you that maybe you don't recognize or like it would mess with your face. Like they proved that. And then there's a few more like Fragoli syndrome we probably talked about, and that's when people believe that strangers are actually familiar people in disguise, which has got to be a pain, right? Intermetamorphosis.
Mom,
Mom, what are you doing?
why
Take
are you wearing that? Why are you wearing that face mask?
Oh man, and that's the whole Ed Gein thing. Back
Yeah.
to that, jeez, right? So inner metamorphosis is that people believe two or more people are constantly switching identities, which is tough.
Hmm.
And then there's the syndrome of subjective doubles. The patient believes that they have doppelgangers and twins.
Ooh.
So those are genuine disorders that probably are caused by you know trauma to the brain. Who knows, abnormalities, right? So these symptoms, and we talked about this. It's not super important, but I think Dave, what you were mentioning before is these like culture bound syndromes.
Yeah.
And now I remember we talked about that a little bit. Like I remember they touched on that in school
Yep,
way
because
back when.
at the back of the DSM, there's all these like potential syndromes, but there's also some very like cultural relevant syndromes, like ones that are specific to certain, you know, areas or geographics or some things like that.
Yeah, like what should we go through a couple of these?
Do you have some?
Yeah, I do. So
Sure.
there's the amok that's from Malaysia, and that's a sudden uncontrolled rage that can lead to violence or murder. Okay. Um, There's DAT syndrome.
I
Do
knew
you?
you were going to say that one. I know
Yeah,
that one is.
DAT syndrome. You know,
I knew that one you were going to say that.
and that one, it's kind of interesting. That's a belief that one is losing semen or bodily fluids, leading to weakness and anxiety. Southeast Asia has a similar
My
sort
dot
of funny
syndrome's
one.
really draining me today.
But that's and then you feel like if someone feels a little weak, you're like, that's that syndrome, you know? So and
It's
then
a
there's
serious thing,
Koro.
guys. We're not
This is very
joking. Yeah.
serious, yeah. So Koro is a belief in that one's penis is shrinking or disappearing. That's a Southeast Asia condition.
Didn't you have that for a little bit?
Yes, I'm at the final stages of Koro syndrome. Um, and then in China they have this is gonna be tough. Shenjing Shuaharu, and that's a syndrome that's just physical and mental fatigue and headaches. In America, we all have that. So, Dave, you were gonna talk about how major mental illness, well, like what sort of where were we
This is
at?
like the worst transition ever.
Yeah, where are we at?
You were gonna say something? All right. So other potential causations. They could be related to abnormalities in the brain,
Mhm.
like damage to frontal lobe or parietal lobe, dysfunction in the brain's reward system, abnormalities in processing of facial and object recognition. So it could be something explainable like that, I guess. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's a number of things that potentially could be playing a role here. But here's what the symptoms would look like for someone with lycanthropy. So you have
Okay.
this persistent and unshakable belief about the misidentification, that you're a werewolf. Anxiety, paranoia, or hostility toward the perceived imposter or double. Difficulty in recognizing and interacting with familiar people, confusion and disorientation, and possible hallucinations or delusions.
Hmm.
Um, some say that lycanthropy may involve a culture bound syndrome, which we've already talked about, um, which could be shaped by the cultural norms or surroundings. So what I mean by that is like if werewolves are something that's kind of considered to be true
Mhm.
or real, then that might be something for that someone could lean more towards as like a delusion about themselves, right? But like if you're living in a society where nobody's talking about werewolves and you just came out and said you're a werewolf, that would be rather odd, right? So it's
Yes.
probably more relevant in a culture or an environment where there's awareness of werewolves and maybe there's a fear of werewolves, there's a fear of turning into a werewolf, there's stories about them, or even in today's society where there's movies about them all the time and like various different stories that we hear. All right, so those are some explanations, but then there's also this whole correlation with you know some of the major mental illnesses that we kind of are all familiar with, like bipolar, schizophrenia, psychotic depression. Some people, maybe have taken hallucinogenic drugs,
That'll do it.
alcohol, epilepsy was mentioned. I even was reading some correlations with sleep apnea, and I have
Okay.
sleep apnea. So you can imagine how I'm shook now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Now, do you have to wear that like
No,
like that mask?
I actually have never done the sleep study,
Okay.
but I just know I have. I
Self-diagnosed.
just know I have it.
Okay.
Sometimes you just get a feeling.
Yeah. Sometimes just no.
Um, so it's there's a number of factors and conditions that could be playing a role here. Um, but yeah, this is a thing, I guess.
Right.
So kind of kind of collecting myself here, trying to figure out where I am. Because I feel like a lot of this stuff starts to get redundant because I mean a big thing with this whole lycanthropy thing is there's not really like a clear explanation
Right, right.
because it sounds like it might vary case to case, which also treatment's going to vary case to case. So like, but one of the things I was reading, and I think it makes a lot of sense, is rather than treating the lycanthropy, it sounds a lot like you're trying to treat the root causes. So if
Mhm.
someone's suffering from schizophrenia, maybe treating the schizophrenia versus the fact that the person believes they're a werewolf.
Right. So lose the silver bullet
Right.
first,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing. So, kind of looking at who's at risk. There was a study on WebMD. I know not the most reliable source, but I got some information from there that looked at 43 cases of clinical lycanthropy and caninethropy.
Mhm.
So that in the belief you're a dog. That was between 1852 and 2020. So there wasn't even 43 lycanthropy cases alone. That's how rare this is. Researchers say that the clinical lycanthropy can happen during a younger person's first psychiatric episode or in those with chronic psychosis. But not all cases were linked to mental health disorders. Other people, like I said, again, the epilepsy was brought up here, and then the hallucinogenic drugs and alcohol intake. So yeah, not very super clear, and it sounds like it was different for most cases here. And then it was also reported that there was cases in U.S., Western Europe, Turkey, Iran, India, so kind of all over the world, which is
Yeah,
interesting.
I wonder why they would diagnose that with like lycanthropy instead of like saying, "Oh, this is schizophrenia and this is how the delusions are
I
manifesting."
I know that's very interesting. But
Mm.
maybe there's a historic reason behind this because of the prominence of the idea of lycanthropy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously been around for quite a long time, so maybe it's
It's
referred
just
to or
still on the
specified.
books. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Here's another interesting thing, or somewhat interesting. So there were 56 cases that a researcher found of meta delusional metamorphosis into animals, not just werewolves, right? So of those 56, 25% of the patients were diagnosed with schizophrenia,
Mhm.
23% with psychotic depression, and about 20% with bipolar disorder. So again, kind of a varied range of diagnoses here, but all within the same like
Yeah.
realm. And among the patients, 34 were men and 22 were women, and their symptoms lasted anywhere from a single hour to decades. So it's like really broad and does seem to impact both men and women as far as like zoanthropy.
Yeah. Not that I'm laughing. This is a serious. I mean, to me,
Did you realize it's like an actual thing?
no, to me it seems like they are calling, so what if oftentimes people will have like delusions thinking that they're like a prophet or Jesus has like singled them out and like why wouldn't that be like it's funny like you can name all these delusions after what the delusions are or you can just put it under the umbrella of a delusion
I mean,
which
is
makes more
it
sense to me.
still considered I mean, I know we're labeling it lycanthropy, but I'm assuming it's still thought of as a delusion.
Yeah, because think about it like this, right? Say this person remove the idea of the lore of werewolves. That's not going to take away this person's capacity for delusion. The delusion would be represented in some other way
Right,
if they had never
exactly.
heard the story of
And that's where we're getting into like
yeah.
just for everyone's understanding, that's where we're coming up with that like that cultural
Right.
relevance of it. So in cultures where werewolves have relevancy, that's where you're most likely going to find lycanthropy.
But and then like we were talking about with truth, if like someone had this disorder, prior to any kind of even the DSM or anything like that, or even being able to label it, and they just felt like they were turned into a werewolf and a person was attacked by that person based on their delusions and what they're seeing, what they're hearing and saying, a person would die and their family would say, our friend, whoever, or our
Yeah,
son or whoever died from a werewolf, and that would be true until they died,
right, right.
which is something interesting that we've talked about in the past.
Yeah. Here's a an example of a case, not super detailed, but just kind of an overview. In There was a 12-year-old pubescent adolescent born in
Ooh.
France. And he had allegedly refused to take part in a school field trip because of the occurrence of a full moon. And 2 months prior, he had been admitted to the emergency department because he had scratched and bit other pupils. Um, no family nor personal psychiatric history was found, and medical history reported supernumerary finger removal and febrile convulsions during infancy.
Hmm.
So maybe some stuff with his birth, I guess. I don't know. But he had distant and inhibited contact hypomnemia and thought blocking. And he exhibited delusional ideas of wolf metamorphosis. He was often heard werewolves telling him to join the pack.
Yeah.
He often looked at himself in the mirror, believing in his eyes had changed color and his teeth had lengthened. And I also read that his mother had discovered deliberately torn trousers.
Like Teen Wolf. This is Teen Wolf.
This is Teen Wolf. The first case of clinical lycanthropy was published in 1852, and a man had been admitted to an asylum in Nancy, France, and was
Hmm.
convinced he had turned into a wolf in
Wow.
1852. What's up with France? You know?
France, they turned into wolves. A lot of wolves, a lot of countryside.
Yes, yes. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: Romani
Mm.
connection to wolves,
Oh yeah.
right?
They're more out in the elements. You know what I mean? Traveling, running into wolves a lot more. They're
So,
they're where a lot of this, and when we say Romani, where like people typically think of gypsies, which is
right,
not, we're not supposed to say that. Or you are, who knows? Um, but yeah, no, they have a great sort of lore. All the cool lore comes from like gypsies, like the vampire lore is a part of their
yeah.
traditions, and so is wolves for sure,
The
and
Wolfman
amulets and
had that.
curses and
Yeah,
all that
the,
kind of stuff.
the Wolfman, the 1940 something classic, was his transformation happened, after he ran into a Romani woman, and I think a curse was put on him or something
Mhm.
along those lines, if I remember correctly. I can't remember.
I
Um,
think he isn't he bitten by something and then he goes to the Romani for
oh,
help.
maybe that's what it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
And
there's
she's like,
definitely some kind of Romani presence.
yeah.
Um,
She's like, this is bad.
this is very bad. Um, so as far as our culture and our relevant, like werewolves and we see them most in like what books and movies and things
Mhm.
like that. That's kind of our reference to them.
Yeah, you see them like remember Twilight, the no shirt
Yes.
vampire.
Yep. Jacob and Edward and Team Jacob was werewolves. And Greg's mic's
Did,
out. There you
did
are.
you have a team?
Did I have a team?
Yeah, like were you team Jacob or team Edward?
Um, hmm. No.
If you had to join a team right now, which team would you get on?
Now I would probably say vampires, but I think before I probably would have said werewolves. I liked
Oh,
werewolves quite a bit.
I like them both, but I think actually I think I'm going Wolf.
Wolf's cool.
Yeah, Wolf's cool. Yeah.
So
So you're
go
gonna talk
ahead.
about some of these movies because this is your strong suit.
Well, I'm sure you have a lot of werewolf movies that you love.
Well, I do love Teen Wolf quite a bit.
That's one of my all-time favorite movies. I've watched
Styles,
that so many times.
yeah, I've seen it 1,000 times. It's
Yep.
it's great. And the whatever they tried to do when they remade like this to like this like teen drama like whatever was awful.
How about
Well, people
how about
like
Teen Wolf
I never
2?
saw it. Jason Bateman boxing,
Yeah, I never watched it actually. No,
not
I
great.
know. It's not known
It's
to be
not
good.
dude because like think like the father in Teen Wolf and
Oh,
Michael J. Fox.
the whole scene where he's in he learns about his mom, right? And
Mm,
she was killed or something like that. And the principal, I think, makes a reference to her like being in like chicken pens or something like that. I,
yeah.
I can't remember exactly how it goes, but the whole scene where he's in the bathroom and he's changing, and then all of a sudden his dad knocks on the door and he's like, what is everything okay? And then he opens the door and his dad's transformed into the
Yeah. It's
werewolf.
great.
It's
It's
so
perfect.
great. And then he's like the coolest person in the world. Michael J. Fox was just the
He
man.
was so
He
cool,
still
and
is,
then
but
like the prom and just the basketball scenes like as a wolf, just awesome.
is
Just
amazing.
just a great cast. And then Boof. Like
Oof.
what was the
Yep.
deal with Boof anyway? Like what
She just liked him so much.
she liked him so much.
But some other classic movies involving lycanthropy. We got The Howling,
Hmm.
which had starred Dee Wallace, who a lot of people might know from E.T. She was the mom. Um, but that was, classic werewolf movie from the 80s.
Hmm.
We have Bad Moon, which I'm sure many people probably haven't seen, but it's another 80s werewolf movie, or maybe early 90s. I can't remember exactly the year.
Leave it to
Um,
Dave to leave some obscure movie that no one's seen.
well, I mean,
Bad
maybe
Moon.
I think, yeah, it's awesome. It's so
Okay,
cool.
we'll check it
Uh,
out.
Silver Bullet, one of my top.
Stephen King.
Yes. Actually, it's based on the book Cycle of the Werewolf, I believe, and stars Corey Haim in a wheelchair and Gary Busey.
Fucking
And
awesome.
I don't know the priest name, but he was in Twin Peaks and he was also in People Under the Stairs, and he's super creepy as the priest. I freaking love that movie. I've seen it
You know what's
so many
great
times.
that you're mentioning Corey Haim for people this time of year? One of my like, if I make a list of movies, make sure you hit these for October. Lost Boys is always on that list.
Yes.
It's one of my
Lost Boys
favorite.
is amazing.
Cry Little
Yes.
Sister, the saxophone
Yeah,
in the beginning,
yeah, yeah. Such a great movie. Such a great
such a
movie.
great movie.
Vampires, yes, but still also amazing. So yeah, he
Oh
Corey Haim
yeah,
was in a
of
vampire
course.
and a werewolf movie. Very cool. Very cool.
So
I'll
listen,
never
and
forget
then
that
one
opening
last
scene.
thing I will say, um, because we're talking about movies right now in Halloween, and like it's a relaxed fit, so it's not all research. Um, I think that one of the best sort of creepy, sort of funny movies is like this movie that I think goes underrated and it's under the radar for most younger people, and they should do yourself a favor and check it out. It's like Tom Hanks at his best, The Burbs.
The Burbs. Yeah. I
It's
don't know. Have
great.
you rewatched that recently?
I have. Do you not? You don't think it holds up?
No, I mean it's still good. I think I remember it as different,
Incredible.
a little
Yeah.
bit different than I when
Yeah.
I rewatched it. I was like, oh, it's good. No, definitely good. Yeah, definitely
Oh,
good.
that's the beginning of the Thriller video.
I'll have to watch it again. Maybe there's just on and off night. I'll have to watch it again.
The beginning of the Thriller video is incredible. When I was a kid, Dave,
The
maybe
the
maybe you've
thriller video is, yeah, it's like
yeah,
epic. Yeah.
epic. And when it's so that was so big that when Dave and I were children, that when I would go to Blockbuster Video, you could rent the Thriller video.
Oh yeah.
And it was like the making of Thriller too, like you get the whole thing. But like it was that
I
werewolf scene, great.
I did not know this existed, but my friend just showed me the other day. The Bollywood version of Thriller is incredible.
I have to
You
check it
have
out.
to YouTube it immediately. It is incredible. The Bollywood version.
I
Definitely
will.
check it out. Now, I did want to mention a couple more. So obviously we talked about the Wolfman as being one of the classics, but predating that was Werewolf of London, which I
Hmm.
also highly recommend if you're into classic horror, like black and white classics. But American Werewolf in London, which was an 80s movie,
Hmm.
um, has is infamously known as having the best werewolf transformation of all time. It
Yeah.
is all practical effects, and it is incredible what they were able to do and how they were able to do this. I believe Rick Baker was one of the special effects artists on that movie, and it's really impressive. Have you seen
Well, so
that?
you don't mention an American Werewolf in London? I mean, in Paris?
That's a trash movie.
Oh.
Sorry, I hated
Is
that
it
movie.
trash? Is that it's
I
gone
don't
down in
know.
history as
I
trash?
mean, I personally remember watching it and absolutely hated it. I'd have to watch it again,
But American
but I don't
Werewolf in
want to.
London is gold
That's like
standard.
that's another horror staple, horror classic. And then Ginger Snaps is a 90s, I think, or maybe early 2000s werewolf movie, a little bit more modern, and it's really fun. It's got a big cult following. A lot of people like it, but it's these two like teen girls that ultimately are transformed into werewolves, and a lot of people like that one. So I figured I'd mention that as well.
Very cool.
Add that to the list for people if you
Add
haven't
to the
seen it.
list. Now, Dave, if just because it is Halloween, we won't get a chance to do this again. And we do have a catalog of, in my opinion, fantastic Halloween
I
episodes.
love
If
the
people,
Halloween episodes. I actually go back and I listen to a few just to relive them.
yeah, they're fun.
Yeah, they are
They're
fun.
fun. Like people should go back. We've gone over like specials and everything like that. But say, Dave, you had to do a top three, not like top three Halloween movies must watch every season for your average watcher. What?
It literally changes every year or every few years because my interests change or because of new things. Like this year, I absolutely had to make sure I watched Sleepy Hollow, Tim Burton's Sleepy Hollow.
Love it.
I was like, I gotta watch that this year. And a lot of that came with my newfound love for the Legend of Sleepy Hollow because we did that episode
Didn't
and it
really
really got me
follow
into it.
anywhere near what the
No, it's a
legend.
total different take,
Yeah.
obviously, but it's still but like that film really is great. It's such a great film. Um, Trick or Treat, Trick or Treat,
Yep.
with Little Sam and
Yep.
the anthology movie. I think that's a great one to always watch for the season. Obviously, all the Halloween movies, but they're playing on repeat, so you can't miss them on AMC. And let's see what else for just for the Halloween season. I mean, those really do capture
Now,
some of
I'd like
my
to get your
tops.
thoughts on this. Someone who's you're more of a connoisseur on these kinds of things. But for me, maybe it's just nostalgia. Every year I will watch Hocus Pocus.
Yeah, you know, I think that's a great one. I actually wanted to watch that again this year. Um, so yeah, that's a great one. I'm trying to think. There's probably another Halloween one that I'm missing. That's like probably a freeform type
Yeah, yeah,
movie.
yeah.
Now Nightmare Before Christmas, I probably will watch again for this year, but it's also one that you can watch on
You can watch
Christmas.
it anywhere from now till just you got till
Yeah,
Christmas.
so there's no rush on that one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Hocus Pocus is great. And I was just in Salem the other day, and I was like kind of, looking at like the town hall, which is in that and things
Fucking
like that.
awesome.
And it's
It's
like,
just
yeah,
great.
it's great.
It's
All right.
great.
Thinking about lycanthropy, like what are your thoughts about the idea of keeping this as like a clinical diagnosis versus just thinking of this as a manifestation of a delusional disorder? Does it need to stick out? Does it need to be
No,
separated?
I think it sh no. I
Yeah.
don't think so at all. I don't think it benefits anybody.
It sounds so rare that it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's a form of it, but also so could like thinking you're Jesus. And we don't
It's
have a
it's it's
clinical
part of the
diagnosis
reason
of that.
why there's over 300, mental health disorders, and there probably
Sure.
only needs to be,
Like, does there need to be a canine therapy? Probably
oh,
not. You're just it's all under
mm,
zoanthropy, and does that even need to exist, or does it just
exactly. No, exactly. Like I
right?
think this stuff needs to be refined a little bit.
Yeah, whittled down, a little simplified.
Hmm.
I mean, does it benefit? Like, no one's going to be in your office, and you're going to be like, "Oh, wait, let me pull up my DSM. I think I know what we have here. That's right.
Yeah.
This is lycanthropy." You're gonna be like, "No, you have a delusional disorder."
Yeah.
I think I
Like
know what we
this,
have here, a delusional
not good.
disorder.
Yeah, exactly. And then I like delusional disorder and I like how that's broken up to like, persecutory and like
Yeah.
um you
The
know,
the idea that you're a different identity, I think is enough. Like that,
absolutely.
just I labeling that
Or
and
you're not
identifying
grounded
that.
in reality.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Like I think having like, being able to identify, oh, this is paranoid thought process. This is misidentification of your own identity, things like or others' identity.
Oh,
That's probably more relevant.
what about this though, Dave? Like, is there room now that like everything has a diagnosis and everything? Is there room and should there be room for, you know, like we talked about, maybe like divine intervention or, accepting like, someone comes in with a ghost story. Does that have to be a delusion? Does that have to have some kind of explanation outside of the paranormal? Is there room for, suspended belief still?
It's a good question because I do think that came up at one point in time in our studies is like this idea of like being culturally sensitive.
Yeah.
Like it's super offensive if someone comes in and they're telling you like this they're giving you their thoughts about like let's say it's something paranormal, but that
Hmm.
ties in directly to their religious beliefs, right? And it's still under the realm of like maybe it's not an extreme delusion, it's not harmful, it's just their thought process. Like I believe I'm seeing the spirit of my passed away spouse.
Hmm.
If I'm just like you're delusional, that's it,
Not good.
but if that's like their cultural religious beliefs, like I'm basically just telling them that that's all delusion, that's
Well, what if they're
incorrect.
like, I've saw, like, I mean, I saw the passed away individual, whoever, and they're telling me that I need to sell my house and quit my job. And
That's
what do
kind
you,
of what happened at the Conjuring house. Did you hear about
yeah,
that news
no.
story? The recent owners, which the Conjuring House is going to be being put up on auction, but the recent owners fired an employee because ghosts were telling them that that employee was like stealing from the business or something like that. What do you make of that, Greg?
Dude, yeah, like that's the first of all,
Because
it's the
that
context.
person,
It's where it is too.
right? That, but yeah, that's a great point because that
Plays a
actually
role.
now gives it. I mean, it still sounds bonkers.
It does.
I was fired because ghosts told you I was stealing.
What percent of you believes that?
That I
Zero?
just held up a zero.
I got I'm doing a 1-0. Is that a 0-1? I'm doing a
10,
what?
10,
I'm
10%.
doing 10%, yeah.
Okay.
I'm doing I got a 10% on that.
All right.
So it's
Yeah, but does that
90%.
give you ground to fire someone because a ghost told you without evidence? Like that person definitely has the right to file for unemployment and, probably, some court case there, some
Yeah, like that
legal
person's
fight.
definitely got a shot in court
Yeah,
and being like this. What?
right.
Like a lot
Right.
of that,
So
you know.
if that person that fired him though came to your office and said, I live in the Conjuring House,
Hmm.
and they was told by ghosts that
Yeah.
my employee is stealing from me, what do you make of that, Greg?
I would say we would have to that would have to be a discussion.
We're gonna have to sit down and talk.
Yeah, we're gonna have to talk about that.
This is tough because we are basically talking about belief systems
I
and
know.
basically telling someone their belief system is wrong.
Right. And
If
who
you
the
believe
fuck knows?
there's no evidence that
Yeah.
they're wrong, but there's also no evidence that they're right.
Right.
And you're personally attacking someone's beliefs by telling them they're wrong. It is kind of
Did you know
messy.
that like there's only 10% of particles that scientists are able to identify and like particles that make up the things that like, that everything that we are. So it's like 90% of what's going on in the world like scientists can't explain. In a
As a
sense, that's what
as a
that's saying.
non-believer of any of this, I
Yeah.
still can see the issue that
Can't be
lies here.
disproven.
I see that like also the issue with telling someone their belief system's wrong. I see the issue with telling someone like they tell me this in confidence, and then I tell them, well, you have delusional. you,
Yeah.
you're in an episode of psychosis, and what that
Yeah.
will do to that person and their belief
And
system.
then like my thought would be like, well, have the ghosts ever visit you outside of this very specific setting? That would be like a question, right? And
Yeah.
then but then there's been people who have fixed delusions about certain areas of their house.
And then you get in that messy territory of like, oh, the devil made me do it.
Yeah.
Or like ghosts took over my body and they made me murder this person.
And it's like,
I can't tell you you're wrong.
can't tell you right.
Can't tell you you're right. So I mean, it is such a slippery slope. Interesting topic of conversation that we probably need to have some kind of formalized or agreed upon way to navigate some of this. Obviously, every situation is so different. Like that would be impossible to have it consistent in every situation, but it brings up some questions. I mean,
It
yeah,
does.
it all is independent on the person that you're going to see too, and that's something that everybody should realize. Like, my belief system is different than Greg's belief systems and response systems. So, like, Greg is probably the person if you are being haunted, you want to go talk to Greg because he's going to
You
believe
want it?
you and he's here with you. I am probably a
I
little more
am.
skeptical,
Yeah.
and I will probably give you a little bit more of a based in reality response.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm going with the ghosts. I'm like, listen, if that's what the ghost
You got
said,
to move.
that's what the ghost said. That's what's gonna
Yeah,
happen.
you got to fire that person. You got to move out of that house.
They
So,
know.
yeah, we just got back into ghosts. We were on werewolves. We're all
I
over the
know.
place. This is
Vampires for a little
messy.
bit.
This is messy.
But 'tis the season.
Tis the season for messy.
That's right.
All right.
That's
We
right.
will be back next week with a literary episode. So all you book nerds, definitely look forward to that.
Hmm.
It's an interesting one. So I'm in the middle of the story now. I'm not going to tell you what it is. I'm in the middle of the story now. I feel like I am reading it. I don't know if I'm absorbing it.
Okay.
I kind of suck with
Absorbing.
I haven't read anything. Like I've been reading a lot of modern novels. I haven't really read anything old in a while. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm re-accustoming myself to like translating some language and things like that. Not that it's in a different language, but just a little more challenging to read.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it should be interesting.
All right.
So we'll see. All right,
Nice.
everybody. We'll see you next week. Have a good rest of your week. See you later.